Nostalgia is a powerful thing. Memories of a time when the world was simpler, more colorful, and movies and TV were actually worth a damn. And so it only goes that there would be art to capture this phenomenon. The term now is nostalgia bait, a lazy cash grab by an entertainment industry that's run out of ideas and regurgitates what's already been. And while there are definitely movies and TV shows of that caliber, sometimes it's just about recreating the good old days. In the 70s and 80s, you had callbacks to 50s like Grease, American Graffiti, Happy Days, Back to the Future, Stand By Me, Dirty Dancing, Dead Poet Society, The Right Stuff, and La Bamba. And then the 80s and 90s, you had callbacks to the 60s with The Wonder Years, Outsiders, My Girl, Apollo 11, and the daddy of them all, Forrest Gump. The 90s had callbacks to the 70s like Dazed and Confused, That 70s Show, Detroit Rock City. Heck, you can find movies from the 1920s and 30s about the good old days, the 1880s and 1890s. I could go on, but you get my point. There has been, and likely always will be, movies and TV shows that pull at those fonder memories. Enter the Duffer Brothers. Matt Ross Duffer had some experience making movies, but it was only after being mentored by M. Night Shyamalan they finally felt comfortable undertaking an entire series based on the works of the Steven Spielberg and King and a generous helping in John Carpenter. I won't go into the plot too much, it's likely you already know it, but for the sake of structure, it's broken into three categories. The first is a friend group of boys and a hybrid between the Goonies and the Losers Club from It. One of the boys, Will, goes mysteriously missing, leading to the others going to search for their friend. Will's a special kid. He's sensitive and all that crap, not helped by the fact he has a single mom who's busy all the time, a brother who's caught in his own world, and a dad that's such a deadbeat he never even shows up beyond this season. The next being the teenagers, mainly Nancy Wheeler, the older sister of Mike, and the older brother of Will, Jonathan. Nancy is the preppy kid that suddenly finds herself dating a jock, Steve, a bit John Hughesy. I'll get back to this in a bit. Then you have the adults, one being Will's mom, Joyce, and Chief Hopper, who's basically Brody from Jaws, except he uses his fists more. All three groups search further and they find what looks like another dimension that comes with a xenomorph like monster the kids affectionately named the Demogorgon. They also find a government conspiracy covering up the boy's appearance, the other dimension, and a girl named Eleven, who's kind of like a mix between E.T. and Jean Grey with a bit of Samara from The Ring. As you probably noticed, there's a lot of, it's kind of like this thing, and that's kind of by design. It's a tribute to 80s pop culture, mainly coming of age and horror movies. It's a fun tribute, especially if you're a fan of what it's tributizing. Held together by some cool sci-fi horror concepts, a bit of interesting government conspiracy, and some solid writing, and some very good acting by the performance of the kids, but especially by the adults of David Harbour as Hopper, and especially Winona Ryder as Joyce, who's just phenomenal as portraying a woman that's on the edge of mental collapse. It's nearly perfect, except for one aspect. The teenagers, mainly Jonathan Byers. It seemed pretty obvious to me that Jonathan was basically a self-insert by the Duffers. A weird nerdy loner who just so happens to end up hanging out with a preppy popular chick and she ditches her jock boyfriend to run in his capable loser arms. Or at least that's what it was supposed to be. Except Steve, the jock, is actually one of the most likable characters of the show. And that all comes down to its actor, Joe Keery. My guess for what happened was Steve was supposed to be a very stereotypical one-dimensional jock bully, but as soon as they cast Keery, they liked him so much they drastically expanded his character. Similar thing happened to Ed Helms on The Office and Chris Pratt on Parks and Rec, where their characters were tools, but the showrunner liked the actor so much they changed the character out of the antagonist role into a more likable one. And with a bit of research, it's apparently exactly what happened, with Steve supposed to be dead by the end of the season 1. So Steve became one of the standouts of the show, even brandishing one of the season's most iconic moments where he faces down the Demogorgon with a baseball bat with nails in it. Which is cool, but it also means the entirety of Jonathan and Nancy's subplot feels a bit incomplete because they had to make room for a much more likable character. As it stands, it's a very good season of television. Very derivative, but that's the point. In the same way Star Wars felt like sci-fi made for sci-fi fans by a sci-fi fan, this felt like a tribute to the 80s for fans of 80s culture by fans of 80s culture.